In the quiet town of Bridgewater Falls, what started as routine harassment of a disabled Vietnam veteran by the notorious Ironfist motorcycle gang turned into the biggest mistake of their lives when they destroyed David Anderson's wheelchair outside Emma's family restaurant. They never imagined it would bring his son home, a Navy SEAL with over 200 successful combat missions, who was about to teach them an unforgettable lesson about real strength. Now back to where it all began. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning fog clung to the streets of Bridgewater Falls as David Anderson guided his wheelchair down Cedar Street with practiced precision. His weathered hands, marked by decades of life's battles, moved with the same methodical discipline that had kept him alive in the jungles of Vietnam. At 68, he remained as puntual as his military days, arriving at Emma's family restaurant exactly at 7 every morning. The bell above the door chimed as David maneuvered through the entrance, the familiar aroma of coffee and fresh baked bread. Welcoming him home, Emma Walsh looked up from behind the counter, her smile warming the room more than the morning sun streaming through the windows, right on schedule. "Mr. Anderson?" Emma called out, already reaching for his usual coffee cup. "Sarah brought in some fresh honey for your tea yesterday, said her bees are working overtime." David positioned his wheelchair at his regular table, the one with the clear view of both the street and the door. Old habits that had served him well on the wall behind him hung 2 photographs, one of a younger David and his dress uniform, the other of his son Michael in full Navy SEAL gear. "How's our boy doing?" Emma asked, setting down his coffee and honey tea. She'd watched Michael grow up, seen him transform from a small-town kid into one of America's elite warriors. "Still can't say much," David replied, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who understood classified operations. "Last letter came from somewhere in the Indian Ocean. You know how it is." The morning routine continued as other regulars filtered in. Officer Connor McCarthy stopped by David's table as he did most mornings. Quiet. Night. "Mr. Anderson." Though Brad at the gas station mentioned seeing some unfamiliar bikes passing through, might be nothing, but David nodded. Understanding the unspoken concern, news of the Ironfist motorcycle, gang's expansion into neighboring counties had everyone on edge. They'd started small, just passing through towns. At first then came the protection racket, the intimidation. The violent Elizabeth Beth Armstrong, the town council member and veteran advocate, hurried in her usual composed demeanor, slightly ruffled. She made a beeline for David's table, keeping her voice low. "They were at Miller's Hardware last night," she reported, sliding into the seat across from him. "3 of them didn't do anything, just looked around," Tom said. "They spent a lot of time asking about the local businesses, who owns what." David stirred his tea, thoughtfully scouting. He said, simply, 20 years in combat had taught him to recognize reconnaissance when he saw it. The conversation paused as a deep rumble filled the air through the window. They watched 3 motorcycles cruise past, moving slowly enough to peer inside. Their riders wore leather vests bearing the Ironfist insignia. A clenched fist gripping a chain just passing through, Officer McCarthy murmured. But nobody believed it. The bike circled the block twice more before parking across the street. Emma's daughter Maria appeared at David's table, coffee pot in hand, her eyes nervously tracking the bikers. "More coffee, Mr. Anderson." "Thank you, Maria," David replied calmly, as if heavily armed gang members weren't sizing up their town. "How's nursing school coming along?" The door chimed again, but this time it wasn't a regular customer. Jake Lockjaw Martinez entered first. His massive frame filling the doorway behind him came Steve Griffin Thompson and Carlos Savage Ramirez. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Lockjaw scanned the diner, his gaze settling on David's wheelchair, then the military photos on the wall. A predatory smile crossed his face as he approached the table. "Well, what do we have here?" he drawled, planting his hands on David's table. "A genuine war hero right here in this little slice of paradise." David met his gaze steadily. Decades of facing death giving him a calm that seemed to irritate the gang leader. The other customers watched in tense silence, fear mixing with shame at their own inaction. "You know what I like about small towns like this?" Lockjaw continued, picking up David's coffee cup and examining it. "Everyone knows their place. Everyone understands. The natural order of things. Strong. Survive. Weak." He glanced meaningfully at the wheelchair. Well, they learned to pay for protection. David's voice, when he finally spoke, carried the same quiet authority. At that it commanded men in combat. "Son, that sea wasn't offered to you." The diner grew so quiet you could hear the clock ticking. Lockjaw's face darkened as he slowly, deliberately poured the coffee onto the floor. "Looks like this town needs some education about respect," he growled. "Starting with you, old man." As the gang members swaggered out, their message delivered, David noticed how Officer McCarthy's hand had never left his holster, how Beth Armstrong was already on her phone, and how Emma stood behind her counter gripping the baseball bat she kept hidden there. The war hadn't come to Bridgewater Falls yet, but the first shots had been fired as David watched the motorcycles roar away. He thought about his son Michael. Somewhere in the Indian Ocean, he'd raised his boy to understand that real strength wasn't about intimidation or violence, but he'd also taught him that some things were worth fighting for. The next few days would test everything. David believed about courage, community, and the true meaning of power. The Ironfist gang thought they'd found an easy target in a wheelchair-bound veteran. They were about to learn just how wrong they were 3 days after the Ironfist's first appearance at Emma's. The changes in Bridgewater Falls were already visible. Miller's Hardware had fresh plywood covering its front window. Courtesy of a midnight accident involving a brick, the gas station's prices had mysteriously risen, with Brad nervously explaining about new delivery fees. Even the morning regulars at Emma's had thinned out fear keeping them home. David wheeled himself down Cedar Street, noting the fresh gang tags marking territory, where children's chalk drawings had decorated the sidewalk outside the library. Now, crude fist symbols dominated the concrete Officer McCarthy's patrol car, passed by more frequently. But they both knew it was an empty gesture 3 cops couldn't stand against. 20 heavily armed bikers they hit Pete's pharmacy last night. Dr. Thomas Mitchell reported falling into step beside David's wheelchair. The old doctor had patched up David after his return from Vietnam, helped him adapt to life in the chair, smashed his delivery van, said next time it'll be his kneecaps if he doesn't pay their insurance fee, and David watched a mother hurry her children across the street when she spotted 2 Ironfist members lounging outside the coffee shop. Pete's still giving out free medicines to folks who can't pay. You know, Pete's stubborn as they come. Like someone else. I know Thomas matched David's pace as they approached Emma's Beth Armstrong's called an emergency town council meeting tonight. Not that they'll do anything. Half of them are already talking about accommodation and reasonable compromises. The bell chimed as they entered Emma's, but the usual warmth seemed diminished. Only 3 other customers occupied the normally bustling diner. Emma tried to maintain her cheerful demeanor, but dark circles under her eyes betray sleepless nights. Maria called in. "Sick today," Emma reported quietly, serving their usual orders. After what happened yesterday, David's hand tightened on his armrest. What happened? 2 of them followed her home from her nursing classes, just followed all the way from the bus stop, didn't say anything. Didn't do anything. Just wanted her to know they could. Thomas cursed under his breath. Classic intimidation tactics. They're systematically identifying pressure points, showing what they can. Target a motorcycle's rumble interrupted their conversation. Frank Warlock Wilson, the youngest of the Ironfist members, entered alone. Unlike the others, he seemed uncomfortable with his role. Eyes darting nervously around the diner boss. "Wants his protection?" "Money," Warlock announced. Trying to sound tough, but his voice cracking slightly, says, "You've had enough time to think about his offer." Emma straightened years of running her business alone after her husband's death, giving her a different kind of strength. "I don't pay. Protection money? Not to you? Not to anyone." Look, Lady Warlock shifted uneasily. "Just pay. Please, you don't want to see what happens when people don't pay." Son David's voice cut through the tension. There's still time to choose a different path. Something flicked in Warlock's eyes. Recognition, maybe even longing for a way out. But fear, one out. You don't understand. Old man. Nobody says no to Lockjaw. Nobody. After Warlock left, Thomas watched David studying the street through the window. "I know that look," the doctor said. "You're seeing patterns just like in Country David." Nodded slowly. "They're organized, professional. This isn't just some random gang lockjaws running a military-style operation. The intimidation, the territory marking the systematic targeting of key businesses. You think they're ex-military. Some of them, the leadership. At least the way they move, the way they coordinate. They're trained." Emma refilled their coffee cups, her hands trembling slightly. "The banks stopped lending to small businesses in town. Says the risk is too high now. 3 shops on Main Street are talking about closing outside." More motorcycles arrived. Steve Griffin Thompson and Carlos Savage Ramirez dismounted their leather vests, displaying Fresh Patch's trophies from other conquered towns. "They're not just taking over businesses," David observed, "they're breaking the town spirit. Make people feel helpless enough. They'll accept anything." Thomas leaned closer. Beth mentioned, "You've been making calls, reaching out to old contacts. Michael needs to know what's happening here." David's eyes never left the bikers outside. Not that he can do anything. His deployment, a crash from the kitchen, interrupted them. They turned to find Ray Shark Johnson and Victor Dragon Rodriguez helping themselves to food their boots, tracking mud across Emma's clean floors. "Consider this a down payment on what you owe," Shark announced, stuffing his mouth with bacon. "Boss says you've got till tomorrow to pay the full amount after that." He drew his finger across his throat. David started to move his wheelchair forward, but Thomas gripped his shoulder. They watched helplessly as the gang members ransacked the kitchen, helping themselves to whatever they wanted after they left. Emma surveyed the damage with tears. In her eyes, "My husband built this place, worked himself to death keeping it running. I won't let them take it." David reached for her hand. "We won't let them." But as he wheeled himself home that evening, past more fresh gang tags and boarded up windows, David wondered if he was making a promise he couldn't keep. The Iron Fist's grip on Bridgewater Falls was tightening, and unless something changed soon, there wouldn't be much of a town left to save. In his living room, surrounded by photographs of his military service and his son's achievements, David picked up his secure satellite phone. He promised himself he wouldn't involve Michael, wouldn't disrupt his critical mission, but watching his town, his friends slowly being crushed under the iron fists. Terror. Some promises he decided were meant to be broken. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The morning dawned cold and gray over Bridgewater Falls, matching the mood that had settled over the town. David wheeled himself toward Emma's, passing Miller's Hardware, where Tom Miller was painting over gang tag. For the third time that week, the old businessman's hands shook as he worked, but his jaw was set in stubborn determination. The rumble of motorcycles filled the air before David reached Emma this time. It wasn't just a few bikes. It was the entire Ironfist leadership. Jake Lockjaw Martinez led the formation, flanked by his lieutenants. They surrounded David, cutting off his path to the restaurant. "Told you about respect, old man?" Lockjaw dismounted, cracking his knuckles. "Seems like you in this town need a harder lesson." David's military training kicked in. Assess threats, identify exits, calculate odds. 8 gang members, all armed, surrounding him in a practice formation. Through Emma's window, he could see her reaching for the phone. Last chance. Lockjaw circled David's wheelchair. "Tell your friends to pay up. Tell them to fall in line, or we start making examples, starting with you." David's voice remained steady. "My father taught me something before I went to Vietnam. Said there are 2 kinds of men in this world, those who prey on the weak and those who protect them. Looking at you boys, I can guess which kind you are." Lockjaw's face darkened. "You calling us cowards? Old man cowards?" "No." David's eyes met each gang member's gaze in turn. "Cowards run. You're something worse. You're bullies who mistake cruelty for strength." The first blow caught David in the chest, knocking the wind from his lungs. Emma burst from the restaurant, but Steve Griffin Thompson intercepted her. "Let him be, Emma." David managed between breaths. "This is what they are. Let everyone see." It Lockjaw grabbed the wheelchair's handle, spinning David to face him. "You think you know what we are? You think your fancy medals and war stories mean anything here? This is our town now." "Not yet. It isn't." David's calm seemed to infuriate them more. "And you're proving right now why it never will be." A crowd was gathering, kept back by the gang members. Officer McCarthy arrived, hand on his holster, but against 8 armed bikers, he could only watch helplessly. "You're right about one thing." Lockjaw's voice dropped dangerously. "We need to make an example." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Lockjaw nodded to his men, who grabbed David's wheelchair. Despite his struggles, they dragged it toward their bikes with practiced efficiency. They began systematically destroying it, cutting straps, breaking wheels, bending the frame. No Emma's scream cut through the morning air. Dr. Mitchell, arriving for his usual breakfast, rushed forward, but was blocked by Carlos Savage Ramirez. David found himself on the ground, watching his independence being destroyed piece by piece, but he didn't give them the satisfaction of begging or crying out. Instead, he began reciting names and dates. "What's that, old man?" Lockjaw leaned down, praying. "Jimmy Martinez, Private First Class, 3rd Marines, died saving his unit from an ambush near Dang, 1969. I held him while he bled out." David's voice carried clearly. "He had your eyes. Might have been your uncle. He died, protecting people. And here you are, dishonoring everything he sacrificed for the name." Hit Lockjaw like a physical blow. For a moment, his mask of cruelty slipped, revealing something else. Shame, perhaps, or recognition. Beth Armstrong had arrived, photographing everything with her phone. "This is assault," she declared. "Destruction of property, hate crime against a disabled veteran. Add it to the list." "Sweetheart." Lockjaw sneered, but his earlier confidence had cracked slightly. "File all the complaints you want, won't change anything." Frank Warlock Wilson stood apart from the others, looking sick. David caught his eye. "Your father was military too." "Wasn't." "He, son? Is this what he trained for? What he taught you?" "Shut your mouth." Lodge kicked the remains of the wheelchair. "You don't talk about our families. You don't know anything about us. I know everything about you," David replied calmly. "I've seen your kind before, men who come home from war carrying darkness, letting it twist them thinking fear equals respect. But deep down, you're still those scared boys who saw too much too young." The word struck deeper than any physical blow. Several gang members shifted uncomfortably. Memories they tried to bury, surfacing unwanted. "We're done here," Lockjaw announced abruptly. "Let him crawl home. Let everyone see what happens when they don't show proper respect." As the gang roared away, the town emerged from hiding. Dr. and Officer McCarthy helped David into a temporary chair from the medical center. Emma brought ice for his bruises, tears streaming down her face. "I'll drive you home." Officer McCarthy offered, his voice tight with suppressed rage. No David's response surprised them. "Take me to the diner." "I'm having breakfast, same as always, David." Dr. Mitchell protested. "You need rest treatment? What I need is to show them they don't win." David's military bearing remained unbroken. "They want people hiding, changing their routines out of fear. I didn't let the Viet Cong dictate my life. I'm not letting these boys do it either." But later, alone in his house, David finally let his composure crack. His hands shook as he dialed the secure satellite number when the call connected. His voice carried all the weight of a father asking. "His son? For help, Michael's son. I need you to come home. It's time somewhere in the Indian Ocean." Michael Anderson stared at the satellite phone, his father's words echoing in his mind. In 15 years of special operations, he'd faced down terrorists, drug cartels, and hostile forces across the globe, but nothing had prepared him for hearing that level of controlled pain in his father's voice. Meanwhile, in Bridgewater Falls, the Ironfist gang had grown bolder. David, using a loaned wheelchair from the medical center, maintained his daily routine. Despite Emma's protests each morning, gang members would follow him, making sure everyone saw him struggling with the unfamiliar chair. They're expanding their operation. Beth Armstrong reported during an informal meeting at Emma's back office. Not just protection money anymore, they're taking over supply chains, forcing businesses to buy from their approved vendors at marked-up prices. Chief William Donovan rubbed his tired eyes. "State police won't help without solid evidence of major crimes, protection rackets, and vandalism aren't enough to bring in the task force. What about the weapons?" Dr. Mitchell asked quietly. "I've treated 3 people this week, broken bones. Systematic beating. These aren't random thugs. They're using military-style interrogation techniques." David listened while studying a map of recent gang activities Beth had compiled. The patterns were clear to his experienced eye. Systematic isolation of the town, control of key resources, psychological warfare against the population, classic insurgency tactics. The bell above Emma's door chimed through the office window. They watched Frank Warlock Wilson enter alone, looking even more uncertain than usual. Emma went to take his order, her face tight but professional. "He's different." David observed military background but not combat. Maybe support role. The violence doesn't sit right with him. How can you tell? Beth asked, photographing the young gang member discreetly, posture, behavior patterns he maintains, military bearing unconsciously. Others try too hard, making a show of it. He's actually trained outside. More motorcycles. Arrived. Steve Griffin Thompson and Carlos Savage Ramirez dismounted their vests, sporting new patches, skulls with numbers, kill markers. David recognized from his war days. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. Chief. Donovan muttered, but we can't prove those marks mean what we think they mean. A commotion drew their attention through the window they watched. Lockjaw. Confronting Tom Miller on the street, the hardware store owner had refused to switch to their supply chain. Your father was right, Dew? Mitchell told David, watching the scene unfold, about there being two kinds of men question. Is how many in this town will stand up to be counted? David's phone. Buzzed a text from Michael. Special operations teams don't always arrive with sirens and flags flying. Sometimes they're already in place before anyone knows they're there. Michael's coming home, Emma asked, hope flickering in her eyes. Better? David allowed himself a small smile. He's already here. The day continued with its new brutal routine. Lockjaw's men patrolled the streets, enforcing their will through calculated violence and threats. But something had changed. Small things barely noticeable unless you knew what to look for: a suspicious power outage at the Ironfist's makeshift headquarters, key surveillance cameras mysteriously malfunctioning, critical supplies delayed or rerouted. The gang's well-oiled machine was developing unexpected friction. Found these in my office. Beth showed David a folder of military records, took some digging, but most of their core group, their discharged veterans, Special Forces, Marines, Army Rangers, all with combat experience, all with disciplinary issues, lost men looking for the structure they had in service. David nodded. Lockjaw. Gives them that, twisted into something dark. Frank Warlock. Wilson approached David's table, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Mr. Anderson, about your wheelchair? I didn't know they were going to sit down, son. David gestured to the empty chair. Tell me about your service. The young man's eyes widened. How did you Air Force right? Technical training. You're not built for this life. Frank, you're better than what they're making you do. Before Warlock could respond. Marcus Tempest. Williams burst into the diner boss. Wants everyone back. Now. His eyes narrowed at Warlock. Were you talking to this old man? Just making sure he remembered his lesson. Warlock stammered, retreating quickly. Later that evening, Chief Donovan brought troubling news. Got word from state police. Iron Fist is moving major shipments through the county, weapons, drugs, possibly human trafficking. They're using Bridgewater Falls as a distribution hub. That's why they need to control the town completely. Beth realized. We're not just victims. We're being made complicit in their larger operation. David watched the sunset from Emma's window, noting the reduced gang presence on the streets. Not fewer members, just fewer visible ones. They were preparing for something. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Michael. Reconnaissance complete. Assets in position. Phase 1 begins at dawn. Dr. Mitchell, reading the message over David's shoulder, smiled grimly. They thought they were hunting this town, didn't realize they were being hunted themselves. Outside, the evening patrol of Iron Fist members rolled past, projecting their usual intimidating presence. But David noticed how Warlock kept looking over his shoulder, how even the more hardened members seemed on edge. They'd spent weeks terrorizing a town, thinking they were the predators. Tomorrow they'd learn what it felt like to be the prey as night fell over Bridgewater Falls. Different shadows moved through the darkness. professionals silent, invisible. Unless you knew exactly what to look for, the Iron Fist gang had brought war to a peaceful town. Now one of America's most elite warriors was bringing something far more dangerous to them. Hope the first sign that something had changed in Bridgewater Falls came when the Iron Fist's weekly supply truck failed to arrive. Lockjaw's rage echoed through the streets as he questioned his lieutenants, none of whom could explain how their carefully planned route had been compromised. David observed the chaos from his usual spot in Emma's, noting the increasing agitation in the gang members' movements. Their usual coordinated patrols had become erratic, reactive rather than controlling. 3 of their bikes wouldn't start this morning. Beth Armstrong reported quietly sliding into the seat across from David. Someone drained the gas tanks. Overnight didn't damage anything, just emptied them, professional job through the window. They watched Frank Warlock Wilson checking beneath his motorcycle, jumping at shadows. The young gang member's military training was showing through his fierce systematic inspection proper procedure, but his hands shook visibly. "Your boy works clean," Chief Donovan murmured. Stopping by David's table for his morning coffee, state police found their surveillance photos of our town scattered across 3 counties. No prints, no traces, just their entire intelligence operation scattered to the wind. David sipped his tea. Calmly wouldn't know anything about that, though. I did hear someone access their supply chain records. Seems all their approved vendors are getting anonymous tips about criminal enterprises and federal investigations. Emma's daughter Maria hurried in through the back door, her nursing uniform still on Mr. Anderson. "The medical center is getting weird calls. All our incoming medical supplies are being rerouted for quality inspection. The gang's people can't figure out who authorized it." The morning brought more signs of invisible resistance. The Iron Fist's communication system began failing. Mysterious IOUs L. Their encrypted channels picked up ghost transmissions, random numbers, military codes, fragments of conversations that meant nothing but kept them from coordinating effectively. "Someone's in their heads," Dr. Mitchell observed, watching Steve Griffin Thompson arguing with Carlos Savage Ramirez outside the hardware store, making them doubt each other, question everything. Lockjaw stormed into Emma's, his usual swagger replaced by barely controlled panic. "Where is he?" he demanded, looming over David's table. "Your boy's back in town, isn't he? Haven't seen Michael in months," David replied truthfully. "He's on deployment. Remember the pictures right there on the wall. Don't play games with me, old man." Lockjaw's voice shook with rage. And something else. Fear things are happening. Professional things, military things. Sounds like you're getting paranoid. David met his gaze steadily. "Seeing ghosts. Isn't that what happens when you live by violence? Start jumping at shadows." The gang leader's hand twitched toward his concealed weapon, but he caught himself. Even in his growing paranoia, he recognized the dozens of witnesses in the diner. Instead, he grabbed David's coffee cup, perhaps remembering their first confrontation, but this time something was different. As he lifted the cup, his sleeve rode up, revealing a fresh tattoo. Military unit insignia partially covered by gang symbols, 3rd Rangers. David noted calmly, "Good unit, heard they investigating some missing equipment from their armory weapons communication gear, tactical supplies. Interesting coincidence." The cup shattered in Lockjaw's grip, coffee and blood mixing as ceramic shards cut his palm. His face went pale outside. More gang members arrived, but their formation was sloppy, unprofessional. The precision that had made them so threatening was cracking under the strain of invisible pressure. "Found this on my desk." Beth passed David a note under the table list of every illegal shipment they're moving through. Town, dates, times, contents. Anonymous. Source: Frank Warlock. Wilson sat alone at the counter staring into his coffee. His vest bore fresh burns where he tried to remove his gang patches. Your father was Air Force security. David called to him. Wonder what he'd think about his son helping run guns through a civilian population. Warlock's head snapped up. How did you nobody knows about lots of things coming to light lately? David replied. Funny. How secrets work. Start pulling one thread, the whole tapestry unravels. The day progressed with more seemingly random incidents. The gang's fuel supplier suddenly refused deliveries, citing regulatory concerns. Their shell companies began receiving IRS audit notices. Every carefully constructed layer of their criminal enterprise was being systematically exposed and dismantled. They're animals when they're scared. Chief Donovan worried watching the increasingly aggressive gang patrols might do something desperate. That's the point. David explained, push them until they make mistakes. Force them to reveal themselves as evening approached. Lockjaw gathered his core members in the street outside Emma's. His voice carried through the diner windows as he berated his men for their failures, paranoia making him see traitors everywhere. Search every inch of this town, he ordered. Find out who's interfering with our business. Find out who's talking to who, and bring me proof of where Anderson's boy is hiding. But even as his men spread out to search other shadows, moved through Bridgewater Falls, professional patient unseen, the Ironfist had spent weeks showing the town their power through brute force and fear. Now, they were learning a harder lesson. Real power often worked best when you couldn't see it coming. David's phone buzzed with a message: Phase 1, complete containment and isolation, established, ready to begin dismantling their organization. Remember what you taught me? Dad patience breaks walls that force can't touch. Outside, the gang's patrols continued, but now they moved like hunted men rather than hunters. They'd brought violence to a peaceful town, thinking their military training made them invincible. They were about to learn that some predators are invisible until it's too late. The Iron Fist's weapons cache disappeared overnight, not stolen, simply relocated, scattered across 3 counties, each piece tagged and documented evidence, carefully preserved by Dawn Lockjaw's increasingly frantic calls to. A supplier revealed another problem. Their entire supply network had gone dark. Found 4 of them tied up behind the gas station. Chief Donovan reported to David during their morning briefing at Emma's professional restraints military grade. No injuries, just contained, along with detailed files of their gun-running operations. David watched Frank Warlock Wilson pacing outside his radio, squawking with confused reports from other gang members. The young man's military training was boring with his gang loyalty, and losing 3 more quit last night, Beth Armstrong added, sliding a folder across the table. But here's what's interesting. They're all former military. The ones with actual training are the first to recognize what they're up against through the window. They observed the remaining gang members, deteriorating discipline. Steve Griffin Thompson was arguing with Carlos Savage Ramirez, their usual coordination replaced by paranoid accusations. Someone hit our warehouse. Lockjaw burst into the diner. His face contorted with rage. Knew exactly where to look, exactly what to take. Security cameras caught. Nothing. Nothing. David sipped his tea calmly. Sounds like professionals must be frustrating being on the receiving end of military tactics. This is your boy's work. Lockjaw slammed his hands on David's table. Had to be. Nobody else could. Still haven't seen Michael. David interrupted, though I did hear something interesting about your old unit, seems. They're investigating someone who taught advanced infiltration techniques, someone who got discharged for teaching those techniques to civilian contractors. The gang leader's face went pale before he could respond. His radio crackled with panic. Another weapons cache discovered another. Safe house compromised. Dr. Mitchell entered, looking troubled. Just treated 2 of your men. Jake found them hanging upside down in the abandoned mill professional stress positions. They're babbling about. Shadows, moving in the dark, things they couldn't see coming. They're breaking. Beth whispered to David. The professional ones recognize SEAL tactics. The others are just getting scared. Lockjaw's phone buzzed photos of his entire operation. Tactical maps, supply routes, everything they'd thought was secret. Each image tagged with a simple message: withdraw or be dismantled. Call in everyone he ordered into his radio, every chapter within riding distance. I want this town locked down. But even as reinforcements roared into Bridgewater Falls, they found their advantage of numbers strangely neutralized. Key intersections were mysteriously blocked. Traffic lights malfunctioned at crucial moments. Simple routes became confusing mazes. Your boy's good. Chief Donovan admitted watching the chaos through Emma's window, making them expend resources, fuel, manpower just trying to move around their own territory. Frank Warlock. Wilson finally broke approaching David's table with shaking hands. Mr. Anderson, I need to talk about what's really happening here, about what Lockjaw's planning before he could continue. Marcus Tempest. Williams burst in, Warlock boss. Wants everyone at the old factory now, why? Warlock's voice cracked. What's at the factory? Don't ask questions, just move. But Tempest's usual confidence had cracked. His eyes darted around the diner, searching shadows that seemed deeper than they should be as evening approached. More motorcycles thundered into town, reinforcements from other chapters, but David noticed something. The gang missed. Each new arrival stretched their resources. Thinner, more gaps in their security, more opportunities for invisible opponents to exploit. They're not just being attacked. Beth realized, watching the gang's increasingly chaotic movements, they're being herded. Every reaction, every response is being channeled towards something. David's phone buzzed with another message. Phase 2, complete organization, compromised supply lines, severed reinforcements, contained, ready to begin direct pressure. Remember what you taught me about cornered animals. Dad, they're most dangerous right before they break outside. Lockjaw gathered his remaining loyal forces, trying to project confidence, but his hands shook as he pointed to locations on a map, laying out plans that were likely already compromised. The sun set on Bridgewater Falls, but few in town slept. The Ironfist had brought violence to their community, thinking their military backgrounds made them unstoppable. Now they were learning a hard lesson. There's always someone better trained, more experienced, more professional. And somewhere in the growing darkness, Michael Anderson watched his father's tormentor slowly unravel. Their fear of the invisible more devastating than any direct confrontation could be. They'd chosen the wrong veteran to intimidate the wrong family, to target the wrong town to terrorize. Tomorrow would show them exact how wrong they'd been. Dawn revealed the first physical evidence of Michael's presence. The Ironfist's main communication center had been systematically dismantled overnight, not destroyed, but precisely disassembled. Each component laid out in military order, their security vulnerabilities documented in precise tactical notation. He's sending a message. David explained to Beth Armstrong, watching gang members frantically trying to restore their communications, showing them he can reach anything, anywhere, anytime. The fear of what might happen next is more devastating than any direct attack. Frank Warlock Wilson slipped into Emma's through the back door, his face pale with fear. Mr. Anderson Lockjaw's lost it. He's called in heavy weapons from other chapters, talking about making examples, burning down businesses, showing everyone what happens when someone challenges the Iron Fist. Beth carefully recorded Warlock's intel, while David studied the young man's body language. The military bearing was more evident now. His training reasserting itself as gang discipline crumbled. They're keeping the serious hardware at the old factory. Warlock continued, hands shaking around his coffee cup. But something's wrong. Equipment keeps malfunctioning. Explosives gone missing. Firing pins disappeared from weapons. It's like we're being haunted outside. Steve Griffin Thompson and Carlos Savage Ramirez were arguing again. The divide between military-trained members and civilian recruits had become a chasm. Those with combat experience recognized the systematic dismantling of their operation. The others just saw chaos. Dr. Mitchell entered, looking grimmer than usual. Just treated. 3 more of them. Found wandering the old mining roads, completely disoriented. Their bikes were fine, but every navigation device was reprogrammed, spent hours riding in circle being watched, never seeing who was watching them. Psychological warfare. David nodded. Michael's not just attacking their operation, he's attacking their confidence, their sense of control. Chief Donovan arrived with troubling news. State police intercepted some of their reinforcements, found detailed evidence of criminal enterprises in 3 states. Someone's been documenting everything, building an ironclad case. Beth spread out her latest intelligence on David's table. It's bigger than we thought. The Iron Fist isn't just a gang, they're muscle for a major criminal organization. Bridgewater Falls was supposed to be their proving ground, showing they could control entire communities through the window. They watched Lockjaw pacing, shouting into a phone that probably wasn't even connected anymore. His lieutenant Marcus Tempest Williams tried to report something, but the gang leader backhanded him across the face. He's breaking. Dr. Mitchell observed, the professional facade is cracking. 20 years of combat experience tells me we're approaching a crisis. Point David's phone buzzed with a message that made him frown. Michael says they're moving weapons into town, getting ready to do something desperate as if confirming his words. More motorcycles roared down Main Street, but these riders were different. No patches, no colors. Just dark clothing and military-grade tactical gear. The Iron Fist was done playing at being outlaws. They were preparing for war. They've got explosives. Warlock whispered fear, cracking his voice, planning to wire up key buildings, send a message no one will forget. Emma, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. My restaurant. It'll be one of their targets, won't it? Symbol of the town's resistance before anyone could respond. Lockjaw himself burst in his eyes wild. Where is he? He screamed, overturning tables. Your boy's out there right now. Isn't he watching us playing his games? David met his gaze calmly. You know what your problem is, Jake. You never learned the most important lesson from your military training. The enemy you can see isn't always the most dangerous one. You think this is funny, old man? Lockjaw drew his weapon, but his hand shook visibly. Think your boy's little ghost act is going to save this town. Let me show you what happens to people who don't. The lights went out. Not just in the diner, but across the entire street. In the sudden darkness, something moved fast. Professional invisible when emergency power kicked in. 30 seconds later, Lockjaw's gun was disassembled on his table, laid out in perfect military order. The gang leader stared at the pieces, his face white without. Without another word, he bolted from the diner. It's starting, David said quietly, watching Lockjaw run to his bike. He'll gather everyone. Now try to reassert control through overwhelming force. It's what desperate men always do. Chief Donovan checked his phone. State police are on standby, but they're hours away. We're on our own, no, David corrected, watching more tactical-equipped riders arrive. We're not on our own. We're just not seeing our allies yet. As night fell over Bridgewater Falls, the town held its breath. The Iron Fist was mobilizing for something big, something violent. But in the growing darkness, other forces were moving, professional, precise, invisible, until the moment of execution, the gang had brought their version of military force to a peaceful town. Now they were about to learn what real military precision looked like, delivered by one of America's most elite warriors, who had a very personal reason for making sure they learned their lesson thoroughly. The first explosion rocked Bridgewater Falls. Just after midnight, a controlled demolition of the Iron Fist's own weapon cache at the old factory, the gang's desperate plan to demonstrate their power had backfired spectacularly. Their own explosives used to destroy their stockpile with surgical precision, 3 teams moving through the north side, Frank Warlock. Wilson reported having fully switched allegiance. He spread hand-drawn maps across Emma's back office table. They're setting up defensive positions, but something's wrong. Equipment keeps failing. Radio frequencies are scrambled. Night vision goggles aren't working. David watched from the window as gang members scrambled to establish a perimeter around town their military training showed in their tactics. But their formation had fatal flaws, gaps, and blind spots that seemed to appear precisely where they do the most damage. Your boy's good. Chief Donovan admitted observing through binoculars, making their training work against them. They're following standard procedures, but he's already 3 steps ahead of those procedures. Beth Armstrong burst in through the back door, clutching a laptop. Just intercepted their encrypted communications lockjaw. Isn't the real leader. He's muscle for someone bigger. Someone's watching this whole situation using Bridgewater Falls as a test case. Before she could elaborate, the night erupted with chaos. 3 of the gang's tactical teams went dark simultaneously when they were found. Minutes later, they were zip-tied with their own restraints. Their weapons methodically disabled professional work. Dr. Mitchell noted, examining one of the captured gang members, Chief Donovan brought in pressure point holds, minimal bruising. They never even saw who hit them through the diner's windows. They watched Steve Griffin Thompson arguing violently with Lockjaw. The gang leader plan was falling apart, and his more experienced members knew it. He's positioning men on the rooftops, Warlock pointed out. But look, they're all facing the wrong way. Someone's feeding them bad intel, making them guard against threats that don't exist while leaving themselves exposed. Emma moved efficiently through her diner, which had become an unofficial command center. Just got word from Maria at the medical center. Their backup teams can't get into town. Someone disabled all their vehicles. Nothing broken, just precise mechanical failures. David's phone buzzed with a message. Primary targets neutralized, moving to secondary phase. Watch the North Road as if on cue. A massive explosion lit up the night sky. The Iron Fist's fuel depot, carefully hidden outside town, erupted in a controlled burn, spectacular but containing the damage to their supplies. Only that's not just demolition work. Chief Donovan observed that's special operations precision, sending a message while minimizing collateral damage. Lockjaw's voice crackled over their intercepted radio channels, increasingly erratic. Where is he? He has to be somewhere. Find him, burn everything if you have to. But his remaining men were too busy dealing with their own problems. Equipment failures, communication blackouts, and strategic weak points seemed to multiply every time they tried to compensate. There. Beth pointed. Suddenly a shadow moved across a rooftop, fast, efficient, professional. For just a moment they glimpsed a figure in dark tactical gear before it vanished again. First time Michael's let himself be seen, David noted. Which means it's a trap warlock. Finished his military training helping him recognize the tactic. He's letting them see just enough to draw them in. Sure enough, Lockjaw took the bait. All units converge on that location. He screamed into his radio full-force response. They watched as gang members poured into the area, only to find themselves boxed in by their own vehicles, which mysteriously refused to start in the confusion. More shadows moved, precise, coordinated, invisible, until the moment of action. Your son's not working alone. Chief. Donovan realized he's got a team. David smiled slightly. Michael never works alone. His unit might be officially deployed elsewhere, but they take care of their own through the night. The pattern continued every time the gang thought they had Michael cornered. They found themselves caught in carefully laid traps. Their tactical advantages turned into vulnerabilities. Their training used against them with professional precision. They're coming here next? Emma said quietly, watching more gang members take up positions around her diner lock. John knows this is the heart of the resistance. David wheeled himself to his usual spot by the window. Good. Let them come. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. As if in response to his words, all the lights in town went out simultaneously in the sudden darkness. Multiple shadows moved with military precision. The gang had brought their version of warfare to Bridgewater Falls. Now they were about to experience what real combat professionals could do. The next phase of Michael's operation was about to begin, and the Iron Fist was about to learn why you don't target a Navy SEALs family or the town they call home. Emma's restaurant became ground zero as Lockjaw finally snapped. The gang leader burst in with his remaining loyal forces, their coordination shattered by hours of precise psychological warfare. But David noticed something crucial. Only the non-military members still followed. Lockjaw. The veterans among them held back, recognizing the tactical disaster their leader was walking into. Where is he? Lockjaw demanded, his composed military bearing completely gone. Your boy's been playing games. Old man time for games is over. Interesting choice of words, David replied calmly, sipping his tea games. That's what this was to you, wasn't it, playing soldier again, pretending you're still the man you were before they discharged you? Beth Armstrong, who had been quietly working on her laptop, spoke up. Staff Sergeant Jake Martinez. Dishonorable discharge. 2019 sold military equipment to private contractors. But that's not the whole story. Is it, Jake? The gang leader's face went white. Through the windows, his remaining forces were spreading out around the restaurant exactly as planned. You were good. Once David continued seeing the psychological crack. Widen. Ranger qualified, multiple commendations. Then something changed. The reports are redacted, but Dr. Mitchell had an interesting theory about your last deployment. Shut up. Lockjaw's hand. Shook on his weapon. You don't know anything? PTSD is not a shame. Jake, Dr. Mitchell said quietly from his corner. But what you did with it, turning trauma into an excuse for cruelty, that's on you outside. More motorcycles arrived, but these riders were different. Frank Warlock Wilson's intel had been right. The real powers behind the Iron Fist were coming to salvage their operation. Your bosses are here, Beth noted, showing David her laptop screen. The ones who really run the organization. The ones using veterans like you as disposable muscle. The restaurant's lights flickered once, twice, 3 times a signal. David smiled slightly. You know what? What your real problem is, Jake? He asked, drawing the gang leader attention. You forgot the first rule of combat. Never let the enemy choose the battlefield. The power cut out completely. In the sudden darkness, multiple shadows moved with lethal precision when emergency lighting kicked in. 30 seconds later, Lockjaw's remaining forces were disarmed and secured. Only the gang leader himself remained standing, now facing the wrong end of his own weapon. Michael stood behind him, his movements displaying the quiet efficiency that made Navy SEALs legendary. No dramatic entrance, no action movie theatrics, just precise professional neutralization of threats. Hello, Jake. Michael's voice was calm, controlled. Let's talk about what happens next. Kill me then? Lockjaw spat, but his bravado was cracking. Show everyone what a big hero you are. If I wanted you dead, you'd never have seen me coming. Michael's tone remained measured. This isn't about killing. It's about choices. Through the windows, they could see more figures moving in the darkness. Michael's teammates systematically containing the new arrivals. The real power brokers behind the Ironfist found themselves expertly outmaneuvered. Your employers are learning an expensive lesson right now. Beth reported monitoring. Police bans. State police are hitting their operations in 3 states simultaneously. Amazing how much evidence appeared in their systems. David wheeled closer to Lockjaw. You used my wheelchair to send a message, now we're sending one back. The Iron Fist isn't just being defeated, it's being dismantled. The only question is whether its members go down with it or help bring it down. Frank Warlock. Wilson stepped forward, removing his gang vest. I'm out, he declared, and I'm not the only one we signed up for Brotherhood. Not this, Other gang members, especially those with military backgrounds, began following suit. The spell of intimidation was breaking, replaced by the realization of what they'd become. Your father would be ashamed. Lockjaw tried one last desperate attack at David hiding behind your son instead of fighting your own battles. My father taught me that real strength isn't about who can hurt people. David replied, it's about who can protect them. Something you forgot along the way. Outside sirens approached state authorities responding to Chief Donovan's signal, but the real work was already done. The Iron Fist's leadership was captured. Their organization exposed, their carefully constructed criminal empire unraveling. We're giving everyone one chance, Michael announced to the captured gang members. Cooperate, help, dismantle the organization, and there's a path back. Resist, he let the alternative hang. Unspoken, Emma began turning on more lights, reclaiming her restaurant. The heart of Bridgewater Falls had held strong, becoming the stage for the gang's final unraveling. David watched the growing dawn through his window, remembering the moment they destroyed his wheelchair, thinking it would break him. Instead, it had set in motion events that would break them, not through violence, but through the precise application of justice. The war for Bridgewater Falls wasn't over, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. The Iron Fist had brought military tactics to terrorize a town. They never expected those same tactics to be turned against them with professional precision by someone who knew exactly how to dismantle their kind of operation. The sunrise promised a very different future for Bridgewater Falls and for the men who had tried to rule it through fear. Dawn broke over Bridgewater Falls as state authorities secured the perimeter around Emma's restaurant. Inside, Michael Anderson methodically explained his operation to Chief Donovan and Beth Armstrong, his tactical gear making him look more like a shadow than the small-town boy they remembered. The precision of his plan became clear, every move calculated, every reaction anticipated. We've been tracking the Iron Fist parent organization for months. Michael revealed, spreading surveillance photos across Emma's counter. Bridgewater Falls wasn't random. They've been using small towns as proven grounds, establishing distribution networks for weapons and drugs. When they targeted Dad, it gave us the opening we needed. David watched from his usual spot as more gang members were processed outside the military. Trained ones separated themselves instinctively, their bearing distinct from the common criminals. Frank Warlock Wilson worked with state authorities, identifying key players and operations. Your boy's operation wasn't just about saving the town. Dr. Mitchell observed quietly. This was about saving them, too. Wasn't it the veterans who lost their way through the window? They watched Lockjaw being led to a police vehicle. The gang leader arrogance had crumbled, leaving behind a man haunted by his own choices. 2 more tactical vehicles arrived carrying federal agents who moved with the same professional precision as Michael found these in their command center. Beth reported showing David her laptop. Detailed plans for taking over small towns across 3 states. Psychology profiles, pressure points, systematic methods for breaking community resistance. They weren't just criminals, they were running a military-style insurgency. Emma moved through her restaurant, now serving coffee to law enforcement and reformed gang members alike. The diner had become something unexpected, neutral ground, where those seeking redemption could find its 7 more chapters have surrendered. Chief Donovan announced, checking his phone words, spreading about what happened here. The veterans in their ranks are standing down, turning evidence over to authorities. Michael joined his father, his professional demeanor softening slightly. When you called, I almost broke mission to come immediately, but you taught me patience breaks walls. Force can't touch watching them destroy your wheelchair. That was the hardest part of the operation. Sometimes sacrifice opens doors. David replied, thinking of how that moment of cruelty had ultimately led to salvation for so many lost soldiers. They thought breaking my wheelchair would break the town's spirit. Instead, it broke their hold on their own people. Outside, more vehicles arrived, serious-looking SUVs, with darkened windows. The higher ranks of the criminal enterprise had come to contain the damage, not realizing they were driving into a carefully laid trap. Right on schedule. Michael checked his watch. Beth send the signal. Beth's fingers flew across her laptop, transmitting data to waiting federal authorities within minutes. The SUVs were surrounded by tactical teams that seemed to materialize from nowhere. Your son's been coordinating with multiple agencies. Chief Donovan explained to David what happened here was just one part of a massive operation. The Ironfist's parent organization is being dismantled across the country. Dr. Mitchell worked quietly with former gang members, his medical training helping identify those truly seeking change versus those just avoiding consequences. Many of them are showing classic signs of PTSD. He reported the violence, the gang lifestyle. It was self-medication for war trauma. Frank Warlock Wilson approached David's table, his face showing both shame and hope. More are coming in. He reported word spreading through veteran networks, guys who lost their way after service looking for a path back. Emma's daughter Maria arrived from her nursing shift, immediately beginning to help process minor injuries, and shocked the restaurant had transformed into something between a command center and a rehabilitation facility. We've got 15 more ready to turn evidence. Beth announced all former military, all with valuable intelligence about the organization's structure. Michael's plan didn't just break the gang. It's giving its members a chance to restore their honor outside the higher ranking. Criminals were LED away in handcuffs. Their elaborate plans for criminal empire building collapsed in the face of professional military precision. They had tried to use veterans as disposable muscle. Instead, those same veterans were now key to bringing down their operation. Found something interesting in their files. Beth showed David her screen psychological profiles on potential recruits. They specifically targeted veterans struggling with civilian life, promising them the structure and purpose they missed from service, twisted their training into something dark. Michael coordinated with his tactical team, their movements still precise, but less shadowy. Now that the need for stealth had passed, we're getting reports from across the state. He reported other gangs trying to fill the power vacuum, but something's different. They're being blocked by their own veteran members. David watched another group of former Ironfist members arrive seeking the same redemption their brother had found. They forgot the most important lesson from military service, he observed. Real strength isn't in causing fear. It's in protecting others. The morning progressed. As more pieces of Michael's operation became clear, the systematic dismantling of the gang's structure hadn't just been about law enforcement. It had been about psychology, about showing lost soldiers a path back to honor your boys done something remarkable. Chief Donovan told David he didn't just break a criminal organization, he started a movement, veterans helping veterans find their way back. Emma's restaurant buzzed with activity as more former gang members arrived, drawn by word of mouth through veteran networks. Each one carried similar stories, lost after service, seeking brotherhood, pulled into darkness, but never comfortable with what they'd become. We're setting up a formal program, Beth explained, showing David preliminary plans, rehabilitation counseling, job training, using the skills that made them valuable to the gang, but redirecting them toward community service. Dr. Mitchell moved among the former gang members, his experience with combat veterans proving invaluable. Many of them just needed someone to recognize their struggle. He reported the gang exploited their pain. Now, they have a chance to heal it. Michael's team maintained professional vigilance even as the immediate threat subsided. There will be pushback, he warned. Criminal enterprises don't surrender territory easily, but we've given them something more valuable than territory. We've given them back their honor as afternoon approached. David watched his son coordinating with various agencies, seeing how the scared boy who'd left Bridgewater Falls had become a warrior who understood the true victory sometimes required saving your enemies rather than destroying them. You did good, David told him during a quiet moment, not just protecting the town, but understanding what these men really needed. Michael's professional demeanor cracked slightly. I learned from the best you never let your injury make you bitter. Never let pain turn you cruel when they destroyed your wheelchair. I wanted to hurt them. But you taught me better? Outside. More. Vehicles arrived. Not police or federal agents this time, but VA counselors, veterans organizations, support services, the operation to dismantle a criminal. Enterprise had evolved into something more powerful, a mission to reclaim lost warriors. The sun climbed higher over Bridgewater Falls, illuminating a town transformed where fear had ruled hope. Now grew where violence had reigned, healing began. The Ironfist had brought war to a peaceful community, never realizing they would find not defeat, but salvation. David watched it all from his window, understanding that sometimes the greatest victories come not from destroying your enemies, but from showing them a better path. They had broken his wheelchair, thinking it would break his spirit. Instead, they had broken their own chains, finding freedom in surrender and strength in redemption. The void left by the Iron Fist's collapse didn't stay empty for long. 1 week after the gang's downfall, David watched from Emma's window as unfamiliar vehicles cruised slowly through Bridgewater Falls scouts from rival organizations, testing the town's defenses, but this time something was different. Former Iron Fist members, now wearing community volunteer badges, noted license plates and tracked movements with their military precision redirected toward protection rather than intimidation. 3 more organizations making moves. Beth Armstrong reported during their morning briefing. The Savage Riders from the east, Nighthawks from the south, and what's left of the Steel Wolves trying to rebuild their old territory, they see Bridgewater Falls as unclaimed territory. Michael studied the intelligence reports while maintaining radio contact with his team, still operating from concealed positions throughout town. "Let them come," he said quietly. "They'll find something they don't expect: veterans defending their community instead of terrorizing it." Frank Warlock Wilson entered through the back door, now carrying himself with renewed military. Bearing 2 more former members arrived overnight. He reported combat engineers looking for the same second chance we got, but they brought warnings. Serious players are watching. What's happening? Here. Dr. Mitchell joined them carrying files on his latest patients. The rehabilitation program's expanding faster than we anticipated. 23 former gang members now counseling 15 already placed in legitimate jobs. But success brings attention. We might not want outside. More motorcycles passed? Not gang members this time, but former Ironfist veterans patrolling alongside local police chief Donovan had implemented Michael's suggestion of integrating reformed members into community protection details. It's not just about defending against new threats. David explained to Emma as she served coffee, it's about giving these men back their true purpose. They were trained to protect before the gang twisted that training. Beth's laptop chimed with alerts getting reports of cartel interest. She announced grimly, "They're not happy about losing their distribution network. Our success here disrupted major criminal operations across 3 states. Let them be unhappy." Michael replied, his quiet confidence reflecting years of facing worse threats. "Every veteran we rehabilitate weakens their ability to recruit. They prey on lost soldiers. We're giving those soldiers a way home. The morning brought more vehicles looking for weakness, but found instead a town transformed. Former gang members directed traffic around school zones, helped elderly residents with groceries, and maintained vigilant but professional security presence. Your boys started something bigger than taking down one gang. Chief Donovan told David other towns are requesting guidance on setting up similar rehabilitation programs. The state's considering funding a formal initiative." Dr. Mitchell worked with a group of former members in Emma's back room, now converted into a counseling space. The key is redirecting their training. He explained, "They're still warriors. We're just helping them remember what they're supposed to be. Fighting for a commotion. Outside." Drew. Their attention, 2 Savage Riders had stopped to harass a local business, only to find themselves surrounded by former Iron Fist members wearing volunteer badges. No violence, no threats, just quiet professional presence making it clear that Bridgewater Falls was no longer vulnerable. They're learning. Beth observed, documenting the incident, using their tactical training for de-escalation instead of intimidation. The transformation is remarkable. Frank Warlock Wilson coordinated with other reformed members. Their military precision, now focused on community protection, got word from contacts and other chapters. He reported, "What's happening? Here is spreading veterans and other gangs are questioning their choices, looking for the same redemption." Michael's team maintained discreet surveillance, watching for more serious threats. Cartels don't surrender territory easily. He warned, "They'll test us, probe for weaknesses. We need to be ready." David wheeled himself to his usual spot, watching former enemies work together to protect the town they'd once terrorized. "They're not just defending territory," he noted. "They're defending their redemption, their chance to restore their honor." Emma's restaurant had become more than a safe haven. It was now a symbol of transformation. Veterans who'd lost their way found their way back through its doors, drawn by word of mouth through military networks about a place offering real brotherhood instead of twisted loyalty. 3 more towns have reported gang members turning themselves in best-announced checking reports, specifically asking for transfer to our rehabilitation program. The ripple effect is spreading. Dr. Mitchell shared progress reports on his patients. The most remarkable transformation is in their sense of purpose. He explained the gang exploited their need for mission and structure. Now, they're finding healthy ways to fulfill that need outside more suspicious vehicles prowled, but found no easy targets. Instead, they saw former gang members working alongside town residents. Their military training used to spot threats and protect civilians, exactly what they'd been originally trained to do. Your father would be proud. Chief Donovan told Michael during a quiet moment, not just of taking down the gang, but of saving the men trapped inside it. The day progressed with more signs of both progress and challenge, while former Ironfist members continued their integration into community service. Intelligence suggested large GEAR criminal organizations preparing to move against what they saw as dangerous precedent. "Let them come," David said calmly, watching another group of veterans arrive seeking redemption. "They'll find something they don't understand. Strength through reconstruction instead of destruction." Beth coordinated with federal agencies, expanding support networks for the rehabilitation program. "We're not just helping these men," she explained. "We're creating a model for breaking the cycle of veteran recruitment into criminal organizations." As evening approached, Michael's team reported increased surveillance from hostile groups, but the town's defenders remained calm, professional. Their military training now serving its true purpose. They thought destroying your wheelchair would break this town's spirit. Emma told David, watching former gang members help close up her restaurant instead, it sparked something they never expected. Real strength, real brotherhood. The sun set on Bridgewater Falls. But the town's transformation continued where fear had once ruled. Hope now grew where violence had once reigned. Protection now prevailed. The Iron Fist had brought war to a peaceful community, never expecting it would lead to their own salvation. David watched the former gang members conducting their evening security checks, seeing not criminals seeking redemption, but warriors finding their way home. They had broken his wheelchair, thinking it would break him. Instead, they had broken their own chains, finding strength in surrender and honor in protecting what they had once sought to destroy. The savage riders made their first move at midnight. 3 unmarked vans attempted to infiltrate Bridgewater Falls, carrying heavily armed men with professional tactical gear. What they didn't expect was running into a defense system designed by a Navy SEAL and executed by reformed veterans who knew every criminal tactic because they'd once used them themselves. Contacted all 3 entry points, Michael reported from his observation post, watching through night vision as former Iron Fist members coordinated with his team. "They're testing our perimeter, looking for weaknesses using cartel tactical procedures." David sat in Emma's restaurant, now serving as their command center, watching Beth Armstrong track movements on her laptop. 4 more vehicles approaching from the north. She announced different signature might be. Nighthawks trying to slip in during the confusion. Frank Warlock Wilson's voice crackled over the radio. "Charlie team has eyes on their scouts. They're carrying military-grade weapons, but their movement is sloppy hired muscle. Not professionals. Chief Donovan coordinated with state authorities, but help was hours away. They timed this. Well, he admitted hit us when outside support is limited. Now we see If our reformed friends really have changed through the restaurant's windows, they watched former Ironfist members moving with disciplined precision, their military training now. Serving to protect rather than intimidate Dr. Mitchell, had set up a medical station in the back, prepared for casualties, but hoping his services wouldn't be needed. Incoming. The radio crackled with warning as the first shots were fired, not at people, but at the town's infrastructure. The attackers were following the same playbook the Iron Fist had once used, trying to break the town's spirit through systematic destruction, but this time was different. Reformed veterans responded with professional discipline, their focus entirely on civilian protection and threat containment. No revenge, no excessive force, just precise measured response to specific threats. They're targeting our rehabilitation centers. Beth reported monitoring security feeds trying to destroy what we've built, but look, our people are prioritizing evacuation and protection over engagement. Emma moved efficiently through her restaurant, now crowded with civilians seeking shelter. Former gang members who'd once terrorized these same people now stood guard, ensuring their safety with military precision, 2 wounded at the north checkpoint. Dr. Mitchell reported rushing to treat injured defenders. They held the line, protected the civilians behind them, didn't return fire when it might have endangered your bystanders. Michael's voice remained calm over the radio, directing his tactical teams. Remember your training. They want us to respond with chaos. Show them what real professionals look like. The attackers' frustration became evident as their initial strategy failed. They'd expected to find a vulnerable town instead. Encountering coordinated defense from men who understood both sides of this conflict got something. Beth called out, her fingers flying over her keyboard. Intercepted communications. This isn't just about territory. They're trying to shut us down because other gang members are watching. Our rehabilitation program is costing them recruits. David watched another group of former Iron Fist members deploy to reinforce threatened positions. They don't understand. He observed every attack makes our people more committed. They're not just defending territory, they're defending their redemption. A massive explosion rocked the night. The attackers had detonated a device at the community center where veteran counseling sessions were held. But even as flames rose, reformed gang members were already responding, their priority clearly on saving lives rather than pursuing attackers. 3 more vehicles approaching, from the East Warlock reported. But something's wrong with their formation. Wait. His voice changed as he recognized what he was seeing. They're not attackers, they're defectors, more veterans choosing to leave their gangs. The night's tension shifted as the attacking forces found themselves caught off guard. They'd expected to demoralize the town's defenders instead. Their violence was causing more gang members to question their loyalties. Confirmed reports from 3 other towns. Beth announced gang members, especially veterans, are walking away from their organizations. What's happening? Here is spreading. Dr. Mitchell worked steadily, treating both defenders and attackers with equal care. The difference is clear. He reported our people show military discipline, professional restraint. The attackers are just thugs with weapons. The battle for Bridgewater Falls continued through the night, but the outcome was increasingly clear. The attacking forces found themselves facing not just tactical defeat, but a fundamental challenge to their way of life. They're pulling back, Michael reported as dawn approached. But this isn't over. The cartels can't afford to let our rehabilitation program succeed. It threatens their entire recruitment model. Chief Donovan surveyed the damage with grim satisfaction. Look at how our people performed: professional, disciplined, focused on protection rather than revenge. A month ago, These same men were the ones causing this kind of destruction. Emma served coffee to exhausted defenders, her restaurant having become both fortress and sanctuary. They tried to break us again, she noted. Just like when they destroyed your wheelchair. But they still don't understand what real strength looks like, as morning light revealed the night's chaos. David watched former enemies working together to repair damage and aid the wounded. The attack had tested their transformation, proving it was real, and lasting got more intel. Beth reported the cartels are pulling back to regroup, but they're worried. What's happening? Here is spreading faster than they can contain it. Veterans and other organizations are asking questions, looking for ways out. Michael's team maintained vigilance, knowing this was just the first test. They'll be back, he warned. With better planning, more resources. But every attack makes us stronger, turns more of their own people against them. The sun rose over Bridgewater Falls, illuminating a town that had once again refused to be broken by violence. Former criminals worked alongside civilians to clear debris and rebuild their commitment to their new path. Strengthened by the night's challenges, they still don't understand. David told his son during a quiet moment, "You can't break a town's spirit by attacking its buildings. Real strength isn't in causing fear. It's in standing together against it." The day brought more vehicles to town. Not attackers this time, but more veterans seeking the same redemption. They'd witnessed the night's violence had only served to prove the power of transformation, the possibility of change. As Bridgewater Falls began to rebuild, David watched former Ironfist members helping restore the same community center they'd once terrorized. The attackers had tried to destroy their rehabilitation program, never realizing that each attack only proved its worth, showing lost soldiers everywhere that another path was possible. The war for Bridgewater Falls had entered a new phase, but its outcome was already certain. You cannot defeat an enemy who refuses to hate, cannot break people who have already chosen to rebuild themselves. The town had faced another test of its transformation and emerged stronger. For it, the first sign of the cartel's new strategy came. Not with violence, but with paperwork. Health code violations suddenly appeared against Emma's restaurant building. Inspectors discovered urgent concerns about the community center's rehabilitation facilities. Tax auditors arrived to examine the records of businesses supporting reformed gang members. They're getting smarter. Michael explained during their morning briefing at Emma's physical attacks failed, so they're using the system against us. Got word that 3 different agencies are investigating our rehabilitation programs. Funding. David watched from his window seat as men in expensive suits visited local officials, their briefcases likely containing more persuasive arguments than mere documents. Beth Armstrong worked frantically at her laptop tracking money trails and connections, found something she announced grimly. Shell companies connected to the cartels have been making donations to key political campaigns. They're buying influence, trying to shut us down legally. Frank Warlock. Wilson entered through the back door looking troubled. They approached me last night, offered serious money to tell the real story about our program, said they'd make me rich if I claimed it was all a fraud. Chief Donovan arrived with worse news. Internal Affairs is investigating our department's cooperation with reformed gang members. Someone's pushing hard to discredit everything we've built here. Through the window, they watched more official vehicles arrive, state inspectors, federal auditors, regulatory officials. The cartels had learned their lesson about brute force, and we're now wielding bureaucracy as their weapon. 2 more rehabilitation centers in other towns have been shut down on technicalities. Beth reported they're using regulatory agencies to stop our program from spreading, and they're good at it. Everything looks legitimate. On paper, Dr. Mitchell faced his own challenges, medical boards questioning my licenses. He revealed anonymous complaints about treating known criminals providing care without proper documentation. They're attacking from every angle. Emma served coffee to the gathered group, her movement steady despite the pressure. Health inspectors coming back for the third time this week found critical violations that weren't there yesterday. They're trying to close us down, cut off our meeting place. David noticed subtle changes in town businesses that had supported their programs suddenly becoming distant officials who've been allies now, avoiding contact. Fear worked in many ways, and bureaucratic intimidation could be as effective as physical threats got more. Intel, Michael reported quietly. Cartel lawyers are preparing civil suits against reformed members claiming damages from their gang days. They're trying to bankrupt anyone who helps us outside. More expensive cars arrived carrying lawyers and bureaucrats instead of armed thugs. The battle for Bridgewater Falls had shifted from streets to spreadsheets, from gunfights to legal fights. They offered me a deal too. Chief Donovan admitted promotion, transfer to a prestigious department. All I had to do was document concerns about employing former gang members of security. Beth's laptop chimed with alerts. They're moving money through sophisticated channels, building paper trails to make our program look corrupt. These aren't street criminals. They're using top-tier financial experts. Warlock coordinated with other reformed members, their military training now tested by challenges they'd never trained for. Our people are solid, he reported, but they're hitting us, where we're vulnerable. Legal fees, regulatory compliance paperwork we never had to handle before a news crew arrived outside their presence. No coincidence they're preparing a hit piece, Beth warned, claiming our program exploits vulnerable veterans, questioning our funding sources. They've got experts ready to testify against us. David watched the systematic assault on everything they'd built, recognizing the military precision behind it. They're still fighting like soldiers, he observed, just using different weapons. Instead of bullets, they're using bylaws. Michael's team adapted their tactics, shifting from physical security to information gathering, found evidence of bribery in 3 departments, he reported, but it's all carefully hidden, routed through legitimate-looking channels. Dr. Mitchell treated another reformed member, stress taking its toll. They're not just attacking our program, he noted they're attacking hope itself, trying to show other gang members that redemption isn't possible. Emma's daughter Maria rushed in with news from the hospital. They're pressuring the medical center to stop accepting our referrals, claiming liability issues, insurance concerns. They're trying to cut off every support system we have. The day progressed with more subtle attacks. Building permits were delayed, license renewals, questioned insurance rates, mysteriously increased for businesses working with reformed gang members. This is actually good news, David said, suddenly surprising everyone. They wouldn't work this hard to stop us if we weren't really hurting them. Every dollar they spend fighting us is proof we're succeeding. Beth's research confirmed his theory. Gang recruitment is down 60% in areas with rehabilitation programs. They're losing their access to military-trained personnel. That's why they're fighting so hard to discredit us. Chief Donovan received not notice of another investigation. They're trying to drown us in paperwork, wear us down with regulations, but they don't understand what they're really fighting. They think this is about programs and policies. David agreed. They don't realize it's about redemption. You can't regulate away someone's desire to reclaim their honor. As evening approached, more reformed members arrived, sharing similar stories of intimidation and bribes. But instead of weakening their resolve, the pressure was strengthening. Their commitment got word from 3 more veterans wanting out of their organizations. Warlock reported they see us standing up to this pressure. It shows them we're for real. Every attack just proves we're worth believing in. Michael coordinated with his contacts in various agencies, building their own network of legitimate supporters. They're fighting us with paper, he noted. But paper leaves, trails every move they make gives us more evidence of corruption. The sun set on Bridgewater Falls, but the town's spirit remained unbroken. They had faced violence and survived. Now they faced something potentially more dangerous, systematic legal attempts to destroy their work. David watched another group of veterans arrive, seeking help. Despite all the pressure against their program, they still don't understand. He told Emma as she closed up for the night, real strength isn't in breaking things, whether you use fists or regulations. Real strength is in standing together, helping others stand up too. The war for Bridgewater Falls had evolved, becoming more complex, but no less crucial. The cartels had brought their best weapons, money, influence, legal pressure, but found themselves facing something they couldn't buy or intimidate: genuine transformation and the power of redemption. The truth about the campaign against Bridgewater Falls broke on a Tuesday morning when Beth A.R. Armstrong's laptop discovered the crucial link money trails shell companies and corrupt officials, all connected back to a single source, a consulting firm that specialized in destroying community resistance to criminal enterprises. Look at this. Beth spread documents across Emma's counter where their morning briefing had gathered. Every official who's been pressuring us received payments through this firm building. Inspectors, health department licensing boards, all of them corrupted through the same channel. Michael studied the evidence with professional interest. They got sloppy, used the same methods that worked in other towns, never expecting we'd have someone with your skills tracking their finances. David watched from his usual spot as media vehicles began arriving outside. Not the hostile press from before, but investigative reporters drawn by whispers of corruption. The tide was turning, got more Chief Donovan, and entered carrying files. Internal Affairs found evidence of bribery in 3 departments. But here's the interesting part. It was discovered by honest officers who've seen how our reformed members have changed this town. Dr. Mitchell arrived with his own revelations. Medical boards investigating the complaints against us. Turns out the same experts who testified against our program have been paid to shut down rehabilitation centers in 4 states. Through the window, they watched Frank Warlock Wilson leading a group of reformed gang members, all in business attire, heading to meet with state investigators. Their military bearing now served them in boardrooms. Instead of battlefields, they're telling their stories. Beth explained how the cartels target veterans, exploit their training, then try to destroy anyone who offers them a way out, and they're bringing documentation, names, dates, bank accounts. Emma moved efficiently through her increasingly crowded restaurant, serving coffee to reporters who'd once tried to discredit them. Health inspector called. She announced with satisfaction, apologized for the harassment. Seems he's cooperating with a federal investigation. Now David noticed the shift in town attitudes. Businesses that had distanced themselves now openly supporting their program. Again, officials finding their courage as the truth emerged. Fear lost its power in the light of exposure, more veterans coming forward. Michael reported checking his phone, not just gang members looking to leave, but former military personnel in government positions. They're exposing corruption, standing up for what's right. Beth's laptop chimed with fresh intel, found their playbook. She announced detailed plans for destroying community resistance. They've used these tactics in dozens of towns. But this is the first time they've failed outside. More vehicles are arrived, but not threatening ones this time. Veterans, organizations, legitimate business leaders, honest officials, all coming to support a program that had proven its worth. Despite systematic attacks, they made a fundamental mistake. David observed, watching the gathering crowd. They thought they were fighting a program, something they could discredit and destroy. They didn't realize they were fighting redemption itself. Warlock returned with promising news. State investigators are cooperating fully. Our evidence is solid. Every reformed member who testifies adds another piece to the puzzle. We're not just defending ourselves anymore. We're taking the fight to them. The day brought more. Revelations. Beth uncovered links between corrupt officials and cartel operations. Michael's team found evidence of systematic interference with veteran support programs. Each discovery strengthened their position. Media's changing its tune. Chief Donovan noted watching reporters who'd once attacked them now exposing corruption instead. Amazing what happens when people realize they've been manipulated. Dr. Mitchell treated another group of veterans seeking help, their numbers growing as the truth spread. Every person we help is living proof against their lies, he observed. They can't fight the reality of transformed lives. Emma's restaurant had become a symbol of resistance, not just to gang violence, but to institutional corruption. Reporters interviewed reformed members, documenting their transition from criminals to community protectors. Federal task force is moving in, Michael announced quietly, using our evidence to target the entire corruption network, but they're doing it carefully. Too many powerful people involved. Beth's research revealed the scope of their victory. This goes beyond Bridgewater Falls. Now other towns are investigating their own officials looking for similar patterns. The whole system of corruption is being exposed. David watched another group of veterans arrive, seeking the same redemption they'd witnessed in others. They tried to bury us in paperwork. He noted instead, they buried themselves in evidence. The afternoon brought more allies. Honest officials tired of corruption, journalists pursuing truth, community leaders standing against intimidation. The cartel's sophisticated attack had backfired spectacularly. Got word from 3 more rehabilitation centers. Warlock reported they're reopening using our documentation to fight false charges. What happened here is becoming a template for others. Michael coordinated with federal authorities, ensuring their evidence reached the right hands. They're not just prosecuting corrupt officials. He explained they're changing how these cases are handled, making it harder to use these tactics again as evening approached. Beth compiled their findings into a comprehensive report. This will protect other towns, she explained, show them what to watch for, how to fight back, turn their own tactics against them. Emma served dinner to a crowded restaurant now filled with allies instead of enemies. They tried to shut us down. She reminded everyone instead. They showed everyone why we necessary. The sun set on Bridgewater Falls, illuminating a community that had faced down not just physical violence, but systematic corruption. They had transformed their victory over gang intimidation into something larger, exposure of institutional evil that had plagued communities across the country. David watched the ongoing activity from his window, seeing former enemies working together to build something powerful. The cartels had tried to destroy their program through sophisticated means, never realizing they were fighting something more powerful, foe than money or influence, the human desire for redemption. The war for Bridgewater Falls had evolved beyond their small town, becoming a battle for integrity in a corrupted system, and once again the transformation of former criminals into champions of justice proved that real change was possible, not just for individuals, but for entire communities. The cartel's desperation manifested in unprecedented cooperation. 3 rival organizations united against Bridgewater Falls, seeing the town's success as an existential threat to their power. The first warnings came through Beth Armstrong's intelligence network, massive movements of men and weapons all converging on their small community. They're not just sending thugs. This time, Michael briefed the gathered group at Emma's restaurant, former Special Forces contractors, professional mercenaries, cartel tactical teams. They're bringing everything they have. David watched from his window as former Ironfist members worked alongside local police, preparing defensive positions with military precision. The town that had once lived in fear of them now depended on their protection. Got the threat assessment, Beth reported grimly. Multiple hit teams targeting program leaders. They're not just trying to shut us down anymore. They want to make an example of us, prevent other towns from following our lead. Frank Warlock Wilson coordinated with other reformed members, their military training now crucial to the town's survival. We've got veterans arriving from across the country. He announced, words spread through military networks. They're coming to stand with us. Chief Donovan arrived with state police updates. They're 3 hours out. At best, we have to hold until then. But here's something interesting. Police and other towns are refusing cartel bribes inspired by what we've done here through the windows. They watched more vehicles arriving, not cartel forces yet, but veterans from other comm committees. Former gang members who'd found redemption through their program now returned to defend it. Medical centers ready, Dr. Mitchell reported, setting up triage stations, got volunteered doctors and nurses coming in, even gang members we helped reform who went into medical training full circle. Emma turned her restaurant into a command center and medical support facility. Her daughter Maria, organizing supplies with military efficiency, learned from reformed veterans. They think destroying us will stop what we've started, she said. They don't understand how hope spreads. David noticed subtle changes in the town's atmosphere. Not panic, but resolved preparation. Civilians worked alongside former criminals, their past differences forgotten in the face of common threat. 3 separate assault groups identified. Michael updated marking positions on their maps. They're coordinating better than expected. Ed using professional military tactics. This won't be like last time. Beth's laptop chimed with intercepted communications. They're offering huge bounties for anyone who helps them trying to turn people against us, but something's wrong with their intelligence. They keep losing assets outside. More veterans arrived. Many wearing badges from rehabilitation programs in other towns. The movement Bridgewater Falls had started was coming home to defend its birthplace. First attacks will target infrastructure. Warlock predicted his military training. Reading the signs, try to isolate us, break communication, then hit hard standard cartel tactics against resistant communities. Dr. Mitchell treated walking wounded from preliminary skirmishes. They've got snipers setting up. He warned professional ones, found their spotter positions abandoned. They're learning our medical response patterns. The day brought more preparations. N's team coordinated with reformed gang members, combining their knowledge of cartel tactics with professional military strategy. The defenders of Bridgewater Falls represented an unprecedented alliance. Got confirmation. Chief Donovan announced multiple cartel leaders personally commanding this operation. They see us as a virus that has to be eliminated before it spreads further. David watched another group of veterans arrive, these wearing patches from rehabilitation programs across 3 states. They still don't understand, he observed. You can't kill an idea once it takes root. Every person we helped reform becomes a seed planted elsewhere. Beth's intelligence painted a stark picture. They're going to hit us with everything. Multiple synchronized attacks, professional demolition teams. They want to erase Bridgewater Falls completely. Emma served coffee to exhausted defenders, her restaurant, now fortified but still maintaining its role as the heart of the community. 4 more programs started in other towns this month alone, she reported. Even if they destroy us, what we built will live on as evening approached. Tension-mounted cartel forces were moving into position, but so were the town's defenders. Former enemies worked together. Their shared redemptions stronger than old hatreds, they're targeting key leaders. Michael warned Dad, Beth Chief Donovan, anyone who helped build this program. They think cutting off the head will kill the movement. Warlock coordinated defensive positions, transformed from gang enforcer to protection. Commander got spotters on every approach early. Warning systems in place. We're ready. Dr. Mitchell completed his medical preparations, knowing the coming fight would test everything they'd built. Every person we help turns from weapon to shield. He observed, they tried to break us with corruption. Now they'll try with violence, but we're not the same town they first attacked the sunset on Bridgewater Falls, casting long shadows. As defenders took their positions, veterans who'd once fought each other now stood, united, protecting the redemption they'd found first. Contact, Michael reported as, darkness fell multiple vehicles approaching from 3 directions, professional spacing tactical formation. They're not hiding anymore. David watched from his window as the town prepared for battle. The cartels had brought overwhelming force to destroy what they built. But Bridgewater Falls wasn't just defending buildings or territory. They were defending the possibility of redemption itself. Beth's laptop tracked enemy movements while coordinating defenders. They think they're hunting us? She noted they don't realize we've been preparing for this since they first targeted us as night deepened. More defenders arrived, veterans, reformed gang members, honest police officers. The movement born in Bridgewater Falls had created something the cartels couldn't understand. An army of the redeemed tomorrow would bring violence. But tonight the town stood, united, former criminals protected, innocent civilians, reformed gang members coordinated with law enforcement. The transformation that had begun with one act of cruelty against a disabled veteran had become something unprecedented. The war for Bridgewater Falls was approaching its climax. The cartels had brought their ultimate weapons, professional killers' military tactics, overwhelming force. But they were about to learn that some things are stronger than force redemption unity and the power of transformed lives. The cartels launched their first coordinated attack at midnight, targeting Bridgewater Falls. Power infrastructure professional demolition teams struck 3 substations simultaneously, but found them already evacuated and hardened against assault. Michael's preparations had anticipated their tactics, using their own military precision against them. Multiple breaches attempted on the north side. Beth reported from her command station at Emma's, monitoring security. Feeds there using cartel tactical teams, but something's wrong with their coordination. Their communications keep failing at critical moments. David watched from his position as former Ironfist members demonstrated their transformation. Instead of returning fire recklessly, they maintained discipline in defensive positions, protecting civilians with professional restraint. 2 casualties at checkpoint 3. Dr. Mitchell called out, rushing to treat the wounded. Our people held the line, kept the attackers from reaching the evacuation zone. Military discipline over gang mentality. Frank Warlock. Wilson's voice crackled over their secure channel. They're probing for weaknesses, but finding our veterans waiting at every turn. These aren't street thugs we're dealing with. These are professional killers. Chief Donovan coordinated with his officers, many now working seamlessly alongside reformed gang members. State police are still hours out, he reported. But something interesting is happening. Other towns are detaining cartel reinforcements inspired by our stand through the restaurant. Windows, they watched multiple attack waves break against their defenses. The cartels had brought overwhelming force, but found themselves facing men who understood both sides of this war. Second wave. Incoming. Michael warned his tactical team, tracking movement patterns. They're adapting, learning from their first failures, but so are we. Every attack tells us more about their capabilities. Emma maintained her restaurant's operation even as bullets flew outside, providing hot coffee and food to defenders. They think destroying buildings will break our spirit, she observed. They still don't understand what we're really fighting for. Beth's laptop chimed with intercepted communications. They're getting frustrated. She analyzed, expected us to break quickly. Instead, they're losing expensive assets to our defensive strategy. The night erupted with another coordinated assault. Professional mercenaries attempted to breach the town's perimeter, but found themselves engaged by former criminals who'd learned real military discipline. South Checkpoint is holding Warlock reported pride, evident in his voice. Our reformed members are showing what real training looks like. They're soldiers now, not thugs. Dr. Mitchell worked steadily, treating wounded from both sides with equal care. Even their professional hit teams are getting sloppy. He noted they don't expect this level of organized resistance from people they considered broken. David watched another attack wave shatter against their defenses. The cartels had brought their best weapons-trained, killers' military tactics, overwhelming force, but they faced something stronger. Men fighting to protect their redemption. They changing tactics, Michael observed as dawn approached, switching from military precision to brutal force, getting desperate, making mistakes. Beth's intelligence network tracked enemy movements. 3 more cartel commanders have arrived. She reported, they can't afford to let us survive. We're threatening their entire recruitment model outside. More veterans arrived to support the defense drawn by word of mouth through military networks. The transformation that began in Bridgewater Falls had created an army of the redeemed West Sector under heavy attack. Chief Donovan called out, "But look at our people maintaining discipline, protecting civilians, showing what they've really become." Emma's daughter, Maria, helped coordinate medical responses, her nursing training now serving alongside reformed gang members, every person we helped reform. She noted is now helping protect others full circle. The battle intensified as cartel forces launched their largest assault yet. But where they expected to find vulnerable targets, they encountered professional resistance from men who'd found purpose in protection rather than violence. They're targeting leadership. Now Michael warned as sniper. Fire focused on command positions getting personal, but their frustration is making them predictable. Warlock led a counter-operation using his knowledge of cartel tactics to anticipate their moves. They think like, "We used to," he explained. "But we've changed, evolved, found something worth fighting for properly." Dr. Mitchell treated another group of wounded, noting the difference in injuries our defenders are taking hits protecting others. He observed, the attackers are falling to their own reckless aggression. David's voice carried calm authority as he coordinated with different sectors. The disabled veteran they once thought vulnerable now helped direct the defense of an entire town. Another wave. Incoming, Beth announced, tracking multiple vehicle movements, but their formation is breaking down. They're losing their professional coordination, resorting to brute force. The morning brought evidence of the night's combat bullets, scarred buildings, medical teams treating casualties, defenders maintaining their positions, but Bridgewater Falls stood unbroken. Found. Their command center. Michael reported they're arguing among themselves, can't understand why their best forces keep failing against reformed criminals and small-town cops. Emma served breakfast to exhausted defenders, her restaurant remaining a symbol of the town's resilience. They destroy property, she noted, while we protect people, shows the difference in what we're fighting for. As the sun rose, the cartel's first major offensive had failed. Their professional killers had been outmaneuvered by reformed criminals. Their military tactics had been turned against them by men who'd found purpose and protection. They'll be back, Michael warned, studying enemy movements with more forces, more desperate tactics. But every attack makes our people stronger, more confident in their transformation. David watched his town's defenders regroup and reinforce positions. The cartels had brought war to Bridgewater Falls, thinking to find easy targets. Instead, they'd encountered something they couldn't defeat with mere violence, the power of genuine redemption. The battle for Bridgewater Falls continued, but its defenders stood firm. Former enemies worked together, protecting the community they'd once terrorized. The transformation that began with one act of cruelty had become something unprecedented, an alliance of the redeemed against those who would deny redemption's possibility. The cartel's next attack struck not at buildings or bodies, but at minds and hearts. They began broadcasting personal information about reformed gang members, revealing past crimes to their new neighbors. Photos of their violent history appeared around town. Each revelation designed to break not bones, but trust. They're trying to divide us. David observed from his position at Emma's watching towns. People read. Posted flyer about their defenders, criminal pasts, make people question who they're trusting, make our reformed members doubt their own redemption. Beth worked frantically at her laptop trying to trace the information. Leaks, they've infiltrated our communication networks, every person we help reform. They're exposing their darkest moments, trying to shame them back into isolation. Frank Warlock Wilson faced his own demons as his complete criminal record was made public. Everything I did, he admitted to David Hands, shaking around his coffee cup. All the people I hurt. Maybe they're right. Maybe we don't deserve second chances. Michael coordinated with his team, finding enemy psychological warfare experts, setting up equipment around town. They're broadcasting on all frequencies now. He reported using professional military-grade systems. This isn't amateur intimidation. Through the windows, they watched townspeople's reactions to the revelations. Some pulled away from reformed members who'd been protecting them. Old fears resurfaced as violent histories came to light. Got 3 defenders who've quit already, Chief Donovan announced grimly. Couldn't face their past being exposed. The psychological pressures working better than bullets. Dr. Mitchell worked overtime, not with physical wounds now, but mental ones. They're targeting trauma. He explained, reminding reformed members of their worst moments, trying to trigger your PTSD responses, make them doubt their transformation. Emma maintained her restaurant as a sanctuary, even as photos of past violence were plastered on her windows. They don't understand. She told a shaken reformed member, those photos show who you were, your actions. Today, show who you are. David watched another veteran struggle with exposed history. They think shame is stronger than redemption. He observed. They're about to learn differently. Beth's laptop chimed with intercepted transmissions. They're escalating, she warned. planning to broadcast torture footage, next videos of our reformed members during their gang days, make it impossible for them to face their neighbors outside professional psychological warfare units, set up loudspeakers, broadcasting confessions from captured gang members, each word designed to break the trust between town and defenders, getting reports of families asking our reformed members to stay away. Chief Donovan reported, "People are starting to question everything we've built here." Warlock coordinated with his teams, many now wearing the weight of their exposed pasts. They're making us remember who we were, he admitted, making it hard to believe we've really changed. But something unexpected began happening as more criminal histories were exposed. Townspeople started sharing their own stories of redemption, former ex-convicts. People who'd found second chances in Bridgewater Falls stepped forward. They don't understand this town. David told a group of shaken defenders they think exposing your past will break you. But your past is exactly why your transformation matters so much. Michael's team intercepted more psychological warfare equipment, but the damage was spreading. Former gang members faced their victims' families, confronted with detailed evidence of past crimes. This is harder than bullets. One defender admitted to Dr. Mitchell, "Can't fight memories with guns, can't protect yourself from your own history." Emma watched her customers react to revelations about their protectors, but instead of rejection, many offered support. They'd seen these men risk their lives to protect the town. Actions spoke louder than history found their next target. Beth reported they're planning to expose corruption during the transformation times when reform members slipped up, struggled with change. Try to prove rehabilitation is a lie. The psychological assault continued through the day. Every defender faced their personal demons, broadcast for all to see. The cartels hoped to break their spirit through shame. They're watching for reactions. Michael observed, looking for signs of breaking, but they don't understand what real strength looks like. David wheeled himself through town, seeing the impact of exposed histories, but where the cartels expected shame to destroy trust. Something else happened. Honesty about the past made the present transformation more powerful. Every sin they expose. Dr. Mitchell noted, just shows how far our people have come. You can't shame someone who's already faced their demons and chosen to change. Chief Donovan dealt with political pressure as officials learned the full history of their reformed defenders. But the evidence of change was stronger than the evidence of crimes. As evening approached, the psychological warfare units increased their assault speakers, broadcast crimes. Videos showed violence. Evidence of dark pasts filled the streets. But Bridgewater Falls stood firm. They think knowing who we were will make people reject who we are. Warlock told his teams, "Show them who we've become." Instead, actions speak louder than history. Beth's intelligence revealed the enemy's frustration. Their psychological weapons, usually devastatingly effective, couldn't break the bond between reformed members and the town. They chosen to protect. Emma served dinner to defenders, still wearing the weight of exposed pasts. "Your history is part of you," she reminded them. "But it's not all of you. What matters is the choices you make today." The sun set on Bridgewater Falls, now fully aware of its defender dark histories. But instead of breaking trust, the revelation strengthened it. Real. Redemption doesn't deny the past. It transforms it into testimony. David watched nightfall on a town that had faced its defenders' demons and chosen to stand with them anyway. The cartels had brought their psychological weapons, thinking to break spirits through shame. Instead, they had only proved how genuine the transformation was. The war for Bridgewater Falls had moved from bodies to souls, but in trying to break reform, armed members threw their past. The enemy had only proved the power of true redemption. Tomorrow would bring new attacks, but tonight the town stood united not in ignorance of its defender history, but in celebration of their transformation. The cartel's massive offensive began at dawn, their forces attacking from all directions simultaneously, professional military contractors LED each assault team. While cartel enforcers provided overwhelming numbers, they'd brought everything they had determined to erase Bridgewater Falls and its message of redemption, multiple breach points. Beth reported from her command station tracking enemy movements. They're not just trying to defeat us anymore, they're trying to wipe us out completely. Make sure no one else ever tries what we did. David coordinated from Emma's restaurant, now their last major stronghold. Through the windows, he watched former Ironfist members working seamlessly with local police, their military training now serving to protect rather than intimidate heavy casualties at the North Checkpoint. Dr. Mitchell called out, rushing to treat the wounded, but our people held the line, wouldn't retreat, even when ordered, said they'd rather die protecting others than live, returning to what they were. Frank Warlock Wilson's voice crackled over their secure channel. They've got us surrounded, but something's wrong with their attack pattern they're fighting. Like they expect us to break, can run, don't understand. We're not who we used to be. Chief Donovan coordinated with his remaining officers, their ranks bolstered by reformed gang members who'd proven their transformation. Under fire, state police are still blocked by cartel forces, he reported. We're on our own. Michael's tactical team engaged multiple enemy units using their professional training to maximum effect. They've got superior numbers, he observed. But our people have something they don't. A reason to fight that's bigger than fear or money through the restaurant. Windows, they watched waves of attackers testing their defenses, but where the cartels expected to find vulnerable targets, they encountered disciplined resistance from men who'd found purpose in protection. East sector under heavy attack. Beth announced monitoring communications. They're trying to split our forces, isolate defenders from each other, but our people won't abandon their posts. Won't leave civilians unprotected. Emma maintained her restaurant's operation, even as bullets flew outside, providing hot coffee and medical supplies to defenders. They think destroying buildings will break our spirit, she said. Helping Dr. Mitchell with the wounded, they still don't understand what we're really fighting for. The battle intensified as cartel forces launched their largest assault. Yet professional mercenaries led the charge, but found themselves facing men who understood both sides of this war and had chosen the right one. South Checkpoint overrun Warlock reported grimly, but our people fell back in order, protecting civilians. First, military discipline over gang mentality. We're not just fighting, we're protecting Dr. Mitchell. Work steadily, treating wounded from both sides. Even their professional hit teams are getting frustrated. He noted they're used to facing enemies who fight from hatred. They don't know how to handle people fighting from love of what they're protecting. David watched another attack wave shatter against their defenses. The cartels had brought their ultimate weapons trained. Killers' military tactics overwhelming force. But they faced something stronger. Men fighting to protect their redemption. They're adapting, Michael warned as a new assault began switching to pure, overwhelming force. No more precision, just trying to crush us with numbers. Beth's intelligence network tracked enemy movements, more cartel commanders arriving, she reported. They're committing everything they can't afford to let our example of redemption survive outside the battle reached new intensity. Former criminals protected innocent civilians with their own bodies. Reformed gang members coordinated with law enforcement. The transformation that began with one act of cruelty had become something unprecedented. Well-best sector-holding Chief Donovan announced, pride evident in his voice. Our people are showing what they've really become. Not just fighters, protectors. Emma's daughter Maria worked alongside Dr. Mitchell, treating the growing number of casualties. Every person we helped reform, she observed, is now willing to die, protecting others. That's real transformation. The cartel forces launched another coordinated assault targeting command positions, but where they expected to find chaos, they encountered professional resistance from men who'd found purpose in protection rather than violence. They're getting desperate, Michael noted as enemy attacks became more reckless. Can't understand why their best forces keep failing against reformed criminals and small-town cops. Huh? Warlock led a counter-operation, using his knowledge of cartel tactics to anticipate their moves. They still think like we used to, he explained. But we've changed. Found something worth fighting for properly. Dr. Mitchell treated another group of wounded, noting the difference in injuries. Our defenders are taking hits protecting others. He observed the attackers are falling to their own aggressive recklessness. David's voice carried calm authority as he coordinated with different sectors. The disabled veteran they once thought vulnerable now helped direct the defense of an entire town. Major push incoming. Beth warned, tracking multiple vehicle movements. They're committing their final reserves, but their formation is breaking down. They're losing their professional coordination. The battle reached its peak as dawn approached. The cartels had brought everything they had determined to destroy, not just a town, but an idea. But Bridgewater Falls stood unbroken, found their main command center. Michael reported their leaders are realizing something crucial. You can't defeat redemption with mere violence. Emma maintained her position, her restaurant a symbol of the town's resilience. They destroy property. She noted serving coffee to exhausted defenders while we protect people shows the difference in what we're really fighting for. As the sun rose, the cartel's massive offensive began to falter. Their professional killers had been outmaneuvered by reformed criminals. Their military tactics had been turned against them by men who'd found purpose in protection. The battle for Bridgewater Falls reached its climax, but its defenders stood firm. Former enemies worked together, protecting the community they'd once terrorized. The transformation that began with one act of cruelty had become something unprecedented, an alliance of the redeemed against those who would deny redemption's possibility. State police finally broke through the cartel's blockade as morning light revealed the scope of the battle. But what they found wasn't a town in ruins. Instead, they discovered Bridgewater Falls defenders had not only held their ground, but had systematically dismantled the cartel's offensive final numbers coming in. Beth reported from her command station, their professional forces are surrendering. The mercenaries realize they're fighting against something they don't understand, can't break people who've already chosen to be unbreakable. David watched from Emma's restaurant as former cartel fighters laid down their weapons, many of them veterans themselves who recognized the transformation they'd witnessed in Bridgewater Falls defenders. Got something interesting, Michael announced, studying intercepted communications. Their leadership is running, not just retreating, abandoning their own people, showing their true nature to everyone who followed them. Frank Warlock Wilson approached the surrendering forces, his military bearing now matched by genuine authority. They're asking about our rehabilitation program. He reported, seeing our transformation made them question their own choices. Chief Donovan coordinated with arriving state authorities, explaining how reformed gang members had become the town's strongest defenders. They're not just surrendering to us, he observed. They're surrendering to the idea that change is possible. Through the restaurant windows, they watched more cartel forces laying down arms. Professional mercenaries, hired killers, hardened criminals, all faced with something their violence couldn't defeat: genuine redemption. Medical teams are treating their wounded. Dr. Mitchell reported every person we help becomes living proof of what we've been fighting for. Even they, injured, are asking about our program. Emma maintained her restaurant's operation, now serving coffee to both defenders and surrendering forces they came to destroy. Hope, she said, watching former enemies talk quietly together. Instead, they found it themselves. Beth's laptop chimed with fresh intelligence: cartel networks are fragmenting. She announced what happened here is spreading. Their own people are questioning the lies they've been told about strength through fear outside. More vehicles arrived. Not more attackers, but representatives from other towns wanting to learn from Bridgewater Falls. The transformation that had started here was already spreading, their command structures collapsing. Michael reported monitoring enemy communications. Every person who surrenders tells others what they've seen. Here can't stop the truth from spreading. Now warlock LED discussions with surrendering forces, many of them fellow veterans who recognized the military precision they had encountered. They thought they were fighting cops and reformed criminals. He explained instead they found warriors who remembered their true purpose. Dr. Mitchell worked steadily treating wounds, both physical and psychological. Even their hardened fighters are asking questions. He noted seeing our defenders risk everything to protect others made them remember why they first put on a uniform. David watched another group of cartel forces surrender their weapons. Laid down not in defeat, but in recognition. They thought destroying my wheelchair proved their strength, he observed. Instead, it revealed their weakness. Getting reports from across the region, Beth announced other criminal organizations are facing internal rebellion. Their own veterans are demanding change inspired by what we've done here. Chief Donovan coordinated the processing of surrendering forces, many asking about rehabilitation options. They came to destroy our program, he said. Now they want to join it. That's real. Victory Emma's restaurant had become more than a stronghold. It was now a symbol of transformation. Former enemies sat together sharing coffee and stories, discovering common ground in their military service, and shared hope for redemption. Cartel leadership is completely isolated. Michael reported their own forces are turning against them. They wanted to make an example of us. They succeeded, just not the way they intended. Warlock organized the surrendering veterans, his own transformation serving as proof of what was possible. They're not just laying down weapons, he explained. They're laying down found the lie, that violence equals strength. The day progressed with more surrenders, each one strengthening the message Bridgewater Falls had fought to protect. Criminal empires built on fear began crumbling as their own members sought something better. Found their contingency plans, Beth reported examining captured documents. They had 3 more waves of attacks planned, but their own people are refusing to fight against what we represent. Dr. Mitchell treated another group of wounded former enemies, now helping each other recover. Physical healing is just the beginning. He observed they're finding emotional healing. In our example, David wheeled through his town seeing not destruction, but transformation. Buildings could be repaired, but the change in people's hearts would last forever. State police found their command center abandoned. Chief Donovan announced their leaders ran, but left behind evidence of everything they've done. Their own people are testifying against them. Emma served meals to exhausted defenders and surrendered attackers alike, her restaurant embodying the spirit that had proven unbreakable. They thought fear was their strongest weapon. She noted love proves stronger as evening approached. Bridgewater Falls began shifting from battlefield to beacon of hope. The transformation that had started with one veteran's defiance had become a movement. Even its enemies couldn't resist. Other towns are already implementing similar programs. Beth reported using our model, our experience. What started here won't stop here. Michael coordinated with authorities ensuring the surrendering forces would have access to rehabilitation. They came to destroy hope. He observed instead they found it themselves. The sun set on a town forever changed, but not in the way its enemies had intended. Bridgewater Falls had faced the ultimate test of its transformation and emerged stronger. The proof was in the former enemies now seeking the same redemption they'd tried to destroy. David watched night fall on his town, remembering the moment they destroyed his wheelchair, thinking to break his spirit. Instead, they'd helped create something unbreakable, a testament to the power of redemption and the strength found in protecting others 1 month after the battle for Bridgewater Falls. David wheeled himself down Cedar Street in a new wheelchair, this one purchased by reformed gang members who'd once destroyed his old one. The morning sun illuminated a town transformed not just physically but spiritually. Where fear had once ruled hope, now grew 3 more rehabilitation centers opening this week. Beth reported during their morning briefing at Emma's state funding approved for expansion to major cities. What started here is spreading faster than we can track. Michael, taking a brief leave from his duties, sat with his father watching the town's activity. Former enemies now worked together, repairing damage and building something stronger than what had been destroyed, got the final numbers. Chief Donovan announced joining them with fresh reports. Over 200 former cartel members have entered rehabilitation programs, most of them veterans who saw what real strength looks like. Here, Emma's restaurant had become more than just a gathering place. It was now officially designated as a veteran support center where former criminals could find their way back to the warriors. They were meant to be medical board approved. Our expanded program, Dr. Mitchell shared, reviewing patient files, using our success here as a model for treating combat veterans who've fallen into criminal life, healing bodies and spirits together. Frank Warlock. Wilson, now Director of Veteran Outreach, coordinated with other reformed members. We've got requests from across the country. He reported other towns wanting to learn how we did this. How we turned enemies into protectors. Through the windows, they watched construction crews rebuilding damaged structures. Former Ironfist members worked alongside the same town's people they'd once terrorized. Their military precision, now directed at restoration instead of destruction. Latest intelligence update. Beth announced scanning her laptop. Criminal organizations are losing their veteran recruits. Our example is making it harder for them to exploit military training for violence. David observed the morning traffic. Normal routines resumed, but with a deeper appreciation for the transformation they'd witnessed. They thought breaking my wheelchair would break our spirit. He reflected, instead, it broke their power over people seeking redemption. State police want to implement our training program. Chief Donovan added teaching departments how to work with reformed gang members, how to recognize the difference between those wanting change and those refusing it. Emma served coffee to another group of veterans seeking help. Her restaurant, now famous as the place where redemption proved stronger than revenge, every person we help, she noted, becomes living proof that change is possible. Michael shared updates from his military contacts. Other special operations units are studying what happened here. He explained learning how to fight criminal organizations, not just with force, but with hope. Dr. Mitchell treated another former gang member, now dealing with the emotional weight of transformation. Physical wounds heal faster than spiritual ones, he observed, but watching our success gives them strength to face their own healing. Beth's research had become a manual for other communities. We're not just stopping criminal activities, she explained. We're cutting off their access to military-trained recruits, showing veterans a better way to find purpose outside. More vehicles arrived, not cartel forces this time, but representatives from other towns seeking to learn from their example. The transformation of Bridgewater Falls had become a blueprint for communities facing similar challenges. Got word from the federal task force, Chief Donovan reported using our evidence to dismantle criminal networks across 3 states, but more importantly, offering rehabilitation to any veterans involved. Warlock LED, another orientation session. For newcomers seeking change, we don't just offer redemption, he told them. We offer purpose. The chance to protect instead of destroy, to become who you were trained to be. The morning brought more signs of transformation. Former enemies shared coffee and stories. Their past conflicts transformed into shared wisdom about the path to redemption. Rehabilitation. Success rate is remarkable. Dr. Mitchell noted, reviewing statistics, over 80% of veteran participants maintaining their transformation proof that military training can be redirected back to its true purpose. David watched another group of veterans arrive seeking help, remembering the moment violence had tried to break this town's spirit. Real strength, he observed, isn't in causing fear. It's in offering hope even to those who once tried to destroy it. Emma's daughter Maria, now coordinating with Veteran Medical Services, shared her own observations. The same skills that made them dangerous, she noted, now make them incredible protectors. They just needed to remember their true purpose. As noon approached, Michael prepared to return to his duties. What happened here? He told his father, isn't just about one town's victory, it's about proving that redemption is stronger than revenge. Beth's laptop chimed with more requests for assistance. Other communities are facing the same challenges we did, she reported. But now they have a blueprint for transformation instead of just enforcement. Chief Donovan reviewed applications from other departments wanting to implement their program. They're realizing that some of their best potential officers are the ones who found their way back from the wrong path. The day continued with more evidence of lasting change. Former criminals protected their community with professional discipline, reformed gang members, mentored others seeking transformation. The cycle of violence had been broken, replaced by a cycle of redemption. Got something special for you, Mr. Anderson, Warlock announced, wheeling in something covered with a sheet when he removed it. David found himself looking at his old wheelchair, not destroyed now, but carefully restored. Every piece we broke. Warlock explained, we fixed, not because we had to, but because we needed to prove to ourselves that anything broken can be restored, including us. The sun set on Bridgewater Falls, illuminating a community that had faced destruction and found transformation. Instead, the town had not just survived, it had become living proof that redemption was possible for anyone brave enough to choose it. David wheeled himself home through streets where fear had once ruled, now filled with hope. The war for Bridgewater Falls had ended, but its impact continued spreading. They had proved that real strength wasn't in breaking things, but in restoring them. Not in causing fear, but in offering hope. Not in revenge, but in redemption. The transformation that began with one act of cruelty had become something powerful enough to change not just a town, but lives across the nation. And it all started because some men thought breaking a wheelchair would break a veteran's spirit. Instead, it had broken their own chains, setting them free to become the warriors they were always meant to be. Protectors instead of destroyers. Guardians instead of criminals. Living proof that it's never too late to choose a better path up. Next two, more incredible stories are waiting for you, right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss. These just click to watch. And don't forget to subscribe. It would mean a lot.